Yesterday, I streamed 13 hours of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot on Twitch, and one of the most asked questions was, is this game worth it? So this video is going to try to answer that question. You could call this a review in progress or first impressions, and if you've watched yesterday's video of me killing Raditz, don't worry, I recorded the whole thing, part 2 is coming. Right now, I'm 15 hours into this game, I have just killed Frieza, and based on my experience so far, here's what I think of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Kakarot is a single-player game. I still see a lot of people asking if there's multiplayer, and no, it is a single-player story. If that's not okay with you, forget about this game and move on. It does feel like a game that once you beat it, you're done with it. Obviously, I haven't finished it yet, but I haven't seen a lot in the way of replayability. If you want to play through a Dragon Ball RPG that seems to be over 50 hours long at the very least, then stick around and see what it has to offer. If not, this game is simply not for you. Feel free to skip this one. There is so much in this game that has disappointed me and so much that has surprised me in a really good way. A lot of my expectations were just completely wrong in different places. First of all, the RPG part of this game itself. You fight, you get XP, you level up, becoming stronger, allowing you to fight stronger enemies. So technically this game is an RPG. I want to make that very clear. At the same time, it also feels like a fake RPG in a way, because this game inflates the XP you get during story missions to the point where grinding for XP is completely useless. I was on Namek doing a side quest, which once I completed gave me 23,000 XP. Fights around this time were giving me around 5,000 XP each, but then you complete a story mission and hey, here's 600,000 XP. What? What are even numbers anymore? This game will just put you at whatever level it pleases to fit the story, to the point where it doesn't feel like you're leveling up by doing side missions or grinding combat or whatever. Your level will just be whatever the developers decided. And this being an RPG, the difficulty mostly comes from how underleveled you are. Well, you kinda can't be underleveled, at least not for the story missions, because as you play through the story, the game just gives you enough XP to skip like 10 levels at a time, and it's stupidly easy. I've had a couple of challenging fights, but it feels like they were randomly challenging. For instance, the fight against Ginyu and Jaice was much more challenging than any of the Frieza transformations, and I don't think that's how it was intended, it just happened to be that way. And the only reason why it was challenging at all is because I made a restriction for myself while playing, which is to not use any healing items during battle. If I was healing during combat, I don't think combat would be fun to me at all. It would just make everything way too easy. That said, combat was one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised by. It is mashy, there isn't a ton of depth to combos or anything, and that's kind of what I expected out of this combat system, but also I expected it to become very repetitive, and it's not. Not thanks to what you can do, but mostly because of what your enemies can do. Enemies have very different attack patterns and special moves that you must learn how to dodge. So the game of balancing offense and defense has been really fun for me, especially during image training when they pair different boss fights together. Those are amongst the best challenges the game has to offer. Attacking Nappa while keeping an eye on Vegeta's Ki Blast flurries and Raditz's charging attacks is quite the endeavor, and it only works because of this dodge mechanic the game has. You can spam the dodge, which makes your character very mobile, and some attacks are very easy to dodge by spamming the button. Others are a bit tougher and you actually have to time it perfectly, which is incredibly satisfying. And since as you progress through the story you keep fighting new characters and new enemies, combat hasn't become repetitive for me. In fact, it has only improved. So if at the start of the game you're okay with the combat, I think you'll enjoy it more and more as you keep playing. Though keep in mind I just finished the Frieza saga, there's still a lot of game to play, it could change, I don't know. Plus, when you unlock a new special move, it can be really fun to balance your loadout. Figure out what you want to replace, try out new ability combos and such. A lot of abilities behave in a similar way, and that's kind of a bummer, but sometimes you get something rather unique and it's exciting to try it out in battle. And then of course you have the actual boss fights during story mode where they throw some unique mechanics at you with cutscenes and all that, and I think they're good enough to play through once. They keep the fights entertaining and give it a bit more weight when you're going through an important moment in the Dragon Ball Z story. And just to wrap up story mode before we move on to side missions and free roaming, the cutscenes in this game are very hit and miss for me. There are moments that they have recreated better than the show. CyberConnect has done it again. They did it for Naruto fans in the past, and now they are treating Dragon Ball fans to some of the best Dragon Ball cutscenes ever made. They hit differently. They're incredibly polished, they're amazing to look at, they use a variety of animation techniques that just work extremely well. It's awesome. It's the cutscenes that everyone's talking about. But then we have the cutscenes no one's talking about. You see, for the big moments they put in the work and made a lot of these cutscenes pop, but for others they just put together something quick and moved on. For instance, this moment in Namek when Vegeta thinks he finally gathered the 7 Dragon Balls, only to discover that one of them has been stolen by Gohan. When he figures that out, His rage in that moment is one of the most intense I have ever seen in the show. In the game, the animation is just this. Don't get me wrong, the big cutscenes are awesome, but to get to those, you have a lot of these dialogue cutscenes, and some have this weird pace to them too. So while some cutscenes hit really hard for me, others just make me want to skip them, which you can do. You can skip cutscenes if you want, so at least there's that. And that's story mode in a nutshell, pretty much. I'd say I'm enjoying story mode overall, even with all the pet peeves I mentioned. I want to see this game through. Instead of making this video, I wish I was playing it right now, but that's just how selfless I am. Hit that like button for selflessness. Now, free roaming. When I first saw the open world and how much you could do, it felt like a world I really wanted to explore and find all the little details and secrets it had to offer. But when I got my hands on the game, that's not exactly what happened. First of all, orb collecting got really old really fast. You gather orbs to unlock skills on your talent tree, but the orbs aren't limited. They actually respawn. They're always available. On one hand, this means that if you're ever missing orbs to upgrade something, you'll always be able to farm them. On the other hand, it means that the prices on the talent tree can be inflated since the orbs are endless. So every time I wanted to unlock something and didn't have enough orbs, I rolled my eyes and off I went to collect them. This is something you'll need to do throughout the entire game. At some point I felt like, oh, I have enough orbs to last me for a long time. I have like 7,000 of each type, but then the talent tree starts asking for 1,000 orbs per each talent. And I'm still at the start of the talent tree. So these orbs just keep vanishing and now I have to farm them again. And the flying is okay. People ask me if the flying is fun, and I guess yes, for the first couple of hours, flying is fun on its own. Right now, for me, it's okay, it's competent. It's mostly a way to get from point A to point B. It's not fun to fly just for the sake of it, especially if you're in an area you've already been to before. You're not looking at a new scenery while you fly, you're just gathering orbs or trying to get somewhere. And there is a lot to do in these different sandboxes, but most of it feels completely pointless. There are red ribbon towers to destroy. When you do, they give you some materials or gifts, which aren't that valuable in my opinion. I'm destroying them because I'm an idiot who needs to clear icons off a map if I see them, but I don't feel like I'm getting a good reward from it. Dinosaurs give you food and your inventory is always full of food, so it just feels like, hey, it's more food. So for me, Kakarot quickly became a game of going from quest to quest, ignoring all these little side activities in between. Because every time I did them, the reward really didn't feel that rewarding. Now I understand there are a lot more activities coming later in the game. I still haven't seen racing, and there's something about a training room with Vegeta. I'm excited to see the new activities, but the ones I've done so far just felt incredibly pointless. There is one exception to this rule, and it's one that just melts my heart, which are these little memories. It's basically a screenshot of the original Dragon Ball with some text describing what happened at that moment, and that nostalgia hits hard for me every time I find one. So with story missions and free roaming out of the way, we've tackled both extremes this game has to offer. Let's talk about the middle ground now. The side missions. This was, for me personally, my #1 reason to be excited for this game. New original stories written by Akira Toriyama to fill in some of the gaps in the Dragon Ball lore? Sign me up, I want to see those. Well, it seems that Akira Toriyama wrote a lot of fetch quests. Some side quests have been awesome. They haven't filled any big lore gaps or whatever, but have provided me with moments that, as a Dragon Ball fan, I found charming or just incredibly funny. For instance, Gohan catches Krillin reading one of Master Roshi's magazines, and Krillin tries to hide it, but then they do some image training and it goes horribly wrong. I love it. These moments also happen during the main story missions, by the way. A great example was the interaction between Kami and King Yama. Absolutely great. But then some of the quest design is terrible. Not only is most of it just fetch quests, they are designed to make you travel through the different regions. And every time you change region, you have a loading screen to sit through, which are just long enough to be annoying. Unless you're playing on PC, I guess. With an SSD, the loading times might be bearable, but on consoles, they kinda ruin the experience. Turtle wants a tomato. The tomato is on another region. Loading screen. The farmer that has the tomato wants you to give him fish in return. Where can you find fish? Back at the Kame House region. Here's another loading screen. Get the fish. Loading screen. Get the tomato. Grab it. Loading screen. Give it to the turtle. It's unnecessarily long, and a lot of quests work this way. Plus, this quest was also a great example because it gives you a soul emblem. And soul emblems, while completely optional, are used for one of my favorite parts this game has to offer, which are the community boards. So this terrible quest quest ended up having an important reward for me, making it not so optional. But let's talk about the community boards and why they are a lot of fun for me personally. A lot more fun than I initially expected, actually. By arranging the Dragon Ball cast in different ways, you level up these different boards. The problem is, each soul emblem has a certain number of combinations that gives you a bigger bonus, and you cannot get all the combinations at once. You will need to sacrifice some combinations for others, which makes the community boards this complex puzzle that not only has multiple solutions, it keeps changing over the course of the game as you unlock more and more soul emblems, because with more soul emblems come more combinations that you can use. You can arrange these soul emblems at random and get some decent bonuses out of it, but some of my favorite moments with this game were spent trying to optimize these boards with the soul emblems that I had at the time. And I bet there will be some optimal way to solve this by the end of the game. But mid-game, without having all the soul emblems unlocked, the optimal path keeps changing, and trying to find the optimal path has been so much fun for me. Overall, this seems like a great game if you're a big Dragon Ball fan. It has fan service everywhere, nostalgia-triggering moments with the memories you collect, the original soundtrack playing in the background, and the amazing cutscenes that pop up during major story events. But if you're not that big of a Dragon Ball fan, the quest design and the lack of motivation for exploring these different sandboxes might just ruin this game for you. And that's basically my opinion on Kakarot so far. It could be an awesome game that everyone could enjoy, but instead, they made a game that's just for Dragon Ball fans again. The way the story is told would be a great way to get new Dragon Ball fans, and I believe some will actually be happy to experience the Dragon Ball story this way for the very first time, but that's while fighting back against all the problems this game has, which won't be as easily overlooked if you're not already a Dragon Ball fan. That said, I pass the question off to you. If you're playing Kakarot, how far into it are you? Are you enjoying the game? Let the people know what you think in the comments down below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye.